At this time, I have the pleasure of presenting the First Lady. I would not dare say I have the pleasure of introducing the First Lady because we all know her. She certainly personifies the slogan, one who needs no introduction. We have seen her over the past 7 years. We have marveled at her brilliance. We have admired her spirit and her strength. She has indeed been one who has spoken to the hopes, needs, aspirations of our community, fighting for our children, health care, job development, standing up strong for affirmative action, believing that she must be a part of the process of lifting all people, creating opportunities for everyone to participate in America's great prosperity. Hillary's presence here today, I think, really personifies and serves as recognition of her understanding of how important our community is in her efforts and her successful bid for the U.S. Senate. You know, many people come to us and talk about looking for our support, but they don't want to work for it. She is one who has no problem coming into our community to share her vision with us and to ask for our support. As you know, she was with us this past Monday. If any of you were on Eastern Parkway, you know that the Secret Service had a tremendous time trying to hold back the crowd. It got so hairy out there that one lady wanted to touch the hem of her garment so much that she bit one of the Secret Service agents trying to get to Hillary Clinton. And that's enthusiasm. Now what we must do is take that enthusiasm and translate that enthusiasm into votes come November 7th. Because, as the polls have indicated, this election will probably be very, very close. But it's going to be you, those sitting out in this audience and in similar audiences, who will make the decision, the determination, and certainly make it possible for Hillary Rodham Clinton to be our next U.S. Senator. Remember, it's only 2 years ago that a gentleman by the name of Eliot Spitzer came before us, and we believed in what he told us. We went out and supported him, and he won by 26,000 votes. Of course, she's going to win by a much larger margin, but we're going to certainly make sure that she wins. My brothers and sisters, it gives me great honor to present none other than the First Lady of the United States of America and our next United States Senator, Hillary Rodham Clinton.
Thank you. Thank you. You know, Clarence, never has it been truer that the apple does not fall far from the tree. I am so grateful to Clarence, and I'm so honored to be here in this church with Reverend Norman and the extraordinary congregation and choir and musicians that have demonstrated beyond doubt that there isn't any place more filled with the Spirit anywhere in America than right here in this church today. And I'm delighted to be here with Major Owens and the other elected officials who Clarence has introduced, and to be in a congregation that is so dedicated to serving people even beyond the walls of this church. The Meals on Wheels program, the tutoring programs, the outreach programs that emanate from the Spirit that fills this congregation make such a difference in the lives of so many people. And I thank you for that, because we cannot be just hearers of the Word. We must be doers of the Word as well. And I'm grateful for this opportunity to come and speak with you for a few minutes. But I want to start by thanking you. I want to thank you for the prayers that you have said on behalf of my husband, my daughter, and myself for the last 8 years. There is no doubt in my mind or my heart that those prayers have sustained us. I know they have uplifted us, and they have protected us. And I am grateful to you. And I'm also very appreciative of the support that you've given to the President and the Vice President and all of us who have worked with them on behalf of our country. I know that time and time again, when the President faced those hard choices that Major was talking about, it was important for him to know, and for the Congress to know, and for the people to know that he would be there taking those tough decisions and that America would stand behind him. And over the years, we have seen that no matter how difficult the challenge was, he could keep going on behalf of the American people because he had the support as well as the prayers of so many across our country. And I'm particularly grateful to New York because twice, in 1992 and 1996, the people of New York gave the President resounding victories, telling him, yes, you're going in the right direction. You know, one of my favorite heroines in American history is Sojourner Truth. Now, you know, I don't think our children yet know enough about many of the important people in our history, but I really hope our children learn about Sojourner Truth. Just her name is enough to just make me get the energy going again, because she did stand for truth, and she did sojourn in difficult places, time and time again. You know, when she was enslaved, she thought every day how she could find her way to freedom. And finally, one day, she escaped. And it was a terrible journey. She went through swamps, she was chased by dogs, she was shot at, but she kept going. And she found her way to freedom here in New York eventually. Now, one would think that after finding her way to freedom, she'd look around and take a deep breath and say, thank you, Lord, I'm just not moving from this place again. I've made it. Thank you. Praise the Lord. I'm happy. But that's not what she did she? She turned around and she went back down south to free more people and lead them to freedom time and time again. And she would send out the word to the plantations. She was coming back. And if people could get their way free to this grove of trees or on the side of this swamp, she'd be there. And so many did. They heeded that call to freedom and they found their way to her. And then you know what she said to them? She'd say, all right, we're about to start on a very dangerous journey. And I want you to remember, no matter what you hear coming behind you, keep going. If you hear those dogs, keep going. If you hear those voices and those footsteps, keep going. If you hear those gunshots, keep going, because you won't get to freedom if you stop, turn back, and go where you came from. You know, it's always like that. You've got to keep going. No matter how hard the times, no matter how difficult the challenge, you've got to keep going. But you need people around you, don't you, who keep you going. You need people who stand there and say, yes, you can do this. You can make it. We know you can. We believe in you. And if you've got that, you can keep going. Well, the same is true with communities, with nations. We all have to know we can keep going. Well, I can tell you that Bill Clinton kept going. Day in and day out, year in and year out, he kept going. And we are a stronger and better country because of his leadership and his willingness to keep going. And here we are at this moment in history where we are the richest, freest nation in the history of the world. There has never been a time like this for any people. Major talked about the Greeks and talked about the Romans. There have been great empires before. There have been rich nations filled with successful people. But there's never been a freer country of citizens who can have the future in their own hands if we keep going. Now is not the time to say to ourselves, well, we made it. Now is not the time, as Sojourner Truth could have, say, well, I'm okay, I can't worry about anybody else. Now is the time to ask ourselves the hard questions. How do we continue this progress and prosperity? How do we make it possible for everyone, every boy and girl, every man and woman to have the opportunity to live up to their own God-given potential? That should be the question we ask ourselves. And the answer lies in what we must do in the decisions ahead in the elections that are held. We know that there are two very different visions and views and values at stake. If you look to the work that has been done by the Clinton-Gore administration, there is no doubt that the best way to continue it is under a Gore-Lieberman administration that is committed to the same views and values. We know that we cannot go back, that we have to keep going. But what the other side offers is what didn't work before. The other side comes to us and says, let's all just have a bit of political amnesia here. Everybody just forget about what it was like back in 1992, and let's go back and do it again. Let's go back to deficits. Let's go back to rising unemployment. Let's go back to shrinking the middle class. I don't think so. We want to keep going. We want to keep going on the path that has worked, that has produced new jobs and economic prosperity. We have 22 million new jobs in this country in the last 8 years. We have the lowest level of African American unemployment in our history. We have the highest percentage of African American home ownership in our history. We have men and women starting new jobs in record numbers. We are on the brink of being able to push that prosperity out even further and extend it deeper. But we have to do what works. That means we have to use these surpluses in the right way. And that, for me, requires that we pay down our national debt, because that's the best way to keep interest rates low and keep more money in our pocket, keep the kind of costs of mortgages and car payments low enough for more people to be able to afford those kinds of opportunities. It also means that we owe it to everyone on Social Security and approaching that age to make sure Social Security is solvent and available. And it certainly means that we have to do everything possible to provide a prescription drug benefit for everyone on Medicare, so prescription drugs are affordable. And we've got to make the investments in education and health care and the environment that are going to make us a stronger nation. And we have to provide middle-class people with the kind of affordable tax cuts that I think will make a real difference in their lives, and not just this big across-the-board tax cut that the other side talks about. And what do I mean by that? I want to make college tuition tax deductible so every single family that care for their older and disabled relatives by providing a long-term care tax credit to help ease the financial and emotional burden. I want to be sure that we reward those who care for our children by providing more tax help to afford child care outside the home, or to give mothers a real choice if they can afford to stay home and take care of their own children. We have to put our children first. They are our most precious investment in the future. And that means we have to do more for education and healthcare. And there is no doubt in my mind, because I have been all over the state, and I've been in schools here in Brooklyn and throughout the city and upstate and on Long Island. We have some of the finest teachers, principals, and schools in the entire country right here in New York. But we have a lot of schools that are overcrowded, that don't have enough qualified, certified teachers, that don't have enough resources to prepare their students for the Regents exams. And we can do something about that. We can fully fund 100,000 teachers that will help us lower class size so that in those lower grades the children learn to read. We can provide financial help to build the schools we need and expand the ones we have, and provide the internet connections so that all of our children have access to the same resources so they can have a first-class education. We know we can do this because we can afford to do it within a balanced budget. The only reason we wouldn't do it is because we don't have the will and the representation in Washington to make sure we get it done. I also know that we can do more to provide quality, affordable health care. You know, I worked on that a few years ago, and we learned a lot from that, but I've never given up on the goal. I want to live in a country where everyone has access to quality, affordable health care. And I think we start with our children, and the children who are in families that work that can't afford health care but don't find that they're eligible for Medicaid. And we've got a new program called the Children's Health Insurance Program, which was passed in this administration. I worked very hard on it. The president fought for it. And we've done some good work in New York. We have now insured 500,000 children in working families, but you know, that leaves 700,000 in New York alone that don't have health care coverage. Think of all the children who lose days from school and their parents lose time from work because they can't afford the medication for asthma. That's just one example. So I want to be sure that we fully fund the Children's Health Insurance Program. I want to be sure we expand the Family and Medical Leave Act so parents can go take care of their child when their child is sick without losing their job. I want to be sure that we have a real Patients' Bill of Rights that holds HMOs accountable. I want to make it possible for us to have the healthiest people in the world right here in Brooklyn, New York, and I know we can do it if we work on it. You know, there is so much at stake in these elections that are coming up. And I think back to how for 30 years I've worked on behalf of children and families and to improve education and health care. Very first job I had in law school was a law student civil rights research council internship with the Children's Defense Fund, where I went to work for Marian Wright Edelman. And we began to investigate some of the abuses that people faced back then. We investigated those so-called segregated academies, remember those? That they were trying to get tax-exempt status for. We investigated why so many children were out of school because they were too poor, they had a minor physical disability that kept them out of schools, and we've seen a lot of progress. And I have watched over the years as we've improved conditions for so many people. But now is the time for us to redouble our efforts, for us to be even more committed. You know, when times are difficult, we might have an excuse not to do everything we know we should do. But when times are good, there are no excuses. Each of us has to do everything we can to provide more opportunity for more people. And we have to help people be responsible so they accept that opportunity and fulfill it responsibly. Because we want people to know what it means to be hardworking and to make a contribution. So there is so much we can do together. I want to go to the Senate to be a voice for that continued progress. I want to go to the Senate to make sure we do provide our teachers and our schools with the resources that are needed. I want to go to the Senate to protect Social Security and Medicare. I want to go to the Senate to pay down that national debt and to lift up everyone to decent health care. I want to stand against divisiveness and discrimination wherever it rears its ugly head. I want to be a voice for inclusion and unity. I want to stand foursquare with you against any effort to send anyone back. I want to be there to say, keep going no matter how hard it gets. I want you to know that for 30 years, I have been a strong and consistent voice for those who are often voiceless. When I say I'll do something, I'll keep working at it until we get it done. One thing that you probably do know about me is when I say I'll stick with you, I'll stick with you. And I need you to stick with me. I need you to keep going with me. And to know that with Al Gore and Joe Lieberman in the White House, with the Democrats back in charge in the House of Representatives, and with more Democrats in the Senate, we will keep going to a better future. We will keep going to truly realize what it means to provide equal opportunity. We will keep going until we get there. Now, you know, whenever I wonder why people sometimes question the direction we should go in, I think back to how even when Moses led the Israelites out of Egypt on their way to the promised land, remember, there he was talking to the Lord, getting the 10 Commandments, and down below a Return to Egypt committee was formed. Remember? You know, people sitting around saying, you know, I mean, this is dangerous. You know, at least we knew we got bread 3 times a day. Let's just go back. You know, there may be snakes and things out here. The Return to Egypt committee, thankfully, didn't get to go back. Moses came down and said, keep going. And of course, then they'd keep going for 40 years. We don't want to keep going that long. We don't need to keep going that long, do we? But we can't keep going unless we are united and unless we have people who will lead us and keep us going. For 8 years, we've had a president who kept going and kept us going. Now, we need to keep going ourselves, and if you will keep going with me, I will always keep going for you and with you in the future. Thank you all very much.
As I am without one plea, that thy blood was shed for me.